Hi, friends, and welcome to Only Green. Sharada Balasubramanian is an international award winning environmental and development journalist. She has published solution oriented environmental stories on water, agriculture, climate change, wildlife, conservation, and energy. Her work has appeared in Al Jazeera, The Guardian, Climate News Network, Dhaka Tribune, Rural 21, and other publications. She has spent over 15 years in the media industry. Sharada won the prestigious Prem Bhatia Memorial Trust Award for Excellence in Environmental Reporting in 2019. She won two Asian Environmental Journalism Awards in 2019, Environmental Journalist of the Year and Environmental Story of the Year. She won the Statesman Award, the Cushrow Irani Prize for Environmental Reporting in 2014. She's also a writer and has published travel stories and short stories. Currently, she is writing books and mentoring budding and practicing journalists on environmental journalism. She does audio, video, and photojournalism along with text stories. Welcome, Sharada, to Only Green.
Thank you. Thank you for the nice introduction.
Okay. Now, when you started about maybe 1.5 decade back, environmental journalism is not something which is any glamorous, or rather it was a very niche field. How did you, land up in this particular niche, and what were the challenges at that point of time?
See, when I started my career, before I started my career after my master's, I was working for Greenpeace, the environmental NGO in Mumbai.
Okay.
And when I was working there, I got to know so much about the environmental issues and what's happening in the country. And I was already writing, I started writing from 16. So I thought, why not merge my communication skills and my interest for environment and become an environmental journalist. That's where the journey began. But I remember when I started off, there was no such thing called environmental journalism. It was not even there covered much in the mainstream media. But as you see now in the last decade or so, especially I think after the 2004 tsunami, it made into the front pages of the newspaper or media organization. They are exclusive pages now. But when I started off, it was very difficult. I think it took almost 4 to 5 years for me to publish just like one story on environment. So that it was that very challenging. But I think now, yes, it was not glamorous then, but it is, I think, a lot of people today who take up environmental journalism, they think it's a lot cool and fad and things like that, but it's a lot more serious than all that. So, yeah.
Okay. Now, in this 15 years of your travel as an environmental journalist, what all do you think are the major issues or major threats that our environment is facing today?
I think for me, the forests are disappearing, and that's an alarm. Because ultimately everything to our basic needs like water, food, everything is connected to the forest resources, right? So I think deforestation for me is, I look at it as like one major problem. And other than that, how I think the rapid phase of change in industrialization and development, and these things, they're happening at such a rapid pace that we actually don't have the time to sit and think back on what could be the repercussions of such actions. So I think that's where, and we have like climate change, which is again like a hot topic right now. People are talking about climate change and extinction of species. So I think these are something to be really focused on, especially the disappearance of forests and how the forest areas are actually getting reduced day by day, world over. So.
Okay. When you look at this particular niche of environmental journalism, I think this requires a lot of responsible and ethical reporting. There'll be a lot of threats from maybe the political circles, maybe from the corporate circles who discount the protection, environmental protection, and build their factories and move on. So, how do you think that a proper, responsible environmental journalist should be functioning?
I think this is something I tell all aspiring journalists, like just make sure that the sources that we get from the stories from are authentic sources. if we are interviewing a scientist on based on a research paper, just make sure that the facts that we get from there are properly communicated in the media. So these fact checking is a very, very strong thing that needs to be pursued, especially when it comes to climate change, because often we read a lot of stories which say that major cities in the world will be under the water in future in 2075 or 2040. So these kind of data, how do we validate it? How do we make sure that we write at the same time we don't make our readers or the people panic that such kind of thing is going to happen? So I think that is where the ethical call comes in. Like people have to be really conscious because often now what I see is many environmental stories, especially human-animal conflict stories, and this I personally tell a lot of environmental reporters. Please be very sensitive when you're reporting a wildlife conflict, because often what happens is when we talk about a conflict, an elephant raiding a crop or anything of that sort, we write it in such a way that rogue elephant, or we use words like these which actually are quite detrimental to the conservation of that particular animal, or you're creating animosity against that animal. On one side you talk about empathy of the people, like okay, we understand that there are humans, there are farmers who have suffered losses, so we need to empathize with them. But at the same time also we need to look at why that animal is there at that land at that particular point of time. So I think that is what makes a comprehensive story. So we can't just look at one human empathy, but we also need to look at animal empathy. So, and that's when a story is more portrayed in a very ethical way. Otherwise, we are just talking about the human side of it and not the animal side of it. So I think these are some of the things that I inherently see among journalists portraying it in a very one-sided way. So I think that needs to really change now, and I hope it changes.
Okay. When we talk about responsible journalism and ethical journalism, there is a role that the environmental journalist plays in creating a sustainable, greener world. So, what do you think is his role? What do you think is the role of an environmental journalist in creating a good environment?
I think rather than just talking about stories at a very macro level, I think we need to go to a micro level and do more of a grassroots kind of a reporting. For instance, if there are coastal villages that are suffering from rising sea level change, we need to go there and see what kind of problems they are facing. So more like at a community level, what are the changes that are happening? Those kind of aspects need to be really looked upon. Very local reporting, we can say even hyper local reporting, I think that's very essential. Because mostly we talk about major stuff, but not really at a micro level. So I think micro reporting needs to really enhance. That is really very important for environmental reporting. So otherwise we generally see in Delhi or Bombay, we talk about air pollution, and that is a major topic that the city kind of environmental reporting. But beyond that, who are the people who are actually getting affected by these climate change or by these environmental issues, by some construction on the beach or any such human activity that will directly affect the communities and the environment. So these kind of stories we really need to dig out. And also what I feel, there is a lot of hesitancy among the environmental journalists to reach out to government agencies or to researchers to get stories, because often they also say that they are not very forthcoming in coming and telling us what's happening. But I think that is an effort that needs to really happen, because the government, the Ministry of Climate Change, what are they doing? What are the schemes that are there in the state climate change policy? These are the stories that really needs to be talked about. So we need to approach in a proper channel and tell that you want to know, you want to find out what is happening. So that kind of extensive reporting from the ground, from the people, from the right sources, when we start doing that, we'll be able to make an impact in terms of helping these vulnerable communities, helping save the environment, and also help in telling people that, see, this is what the government is taking proactive measures against this, and this is where it stands. So I think as an environmental journalist, I just feel that I am more of a communicator. I would not I think it would be an overstatement to say that I'm a change maker, but I think I'm just a communicator. So between, and probably somebody who's in the public sector work, like, any person who's doing public service, I think I pretty much belong to that category. I mean, that's what I would not call myself a change maker.
Okay. Now, I mean, that's a very good thing. I mean, maybe in the last 15 years, I mean, when you've been reporting certain activities that happen, there would have been a lot of threats coming from the political circles and the corporates. Can you give us a brief about maybe a couple of experiences that are unforgettable?
Yeah, those kind of things happen, especially when we are trying to report illegal mining cases of poaching. These sort of risks are pretty much happening because today environment is politics. It's not just environment, right? So these are the challenges, and I know for a fact that there are many young journalists who are actually on the field exposing all these malpractices or what's happening inside a forest. About poaching or about illegal things that are happening. But this is the brunt that we have to face when we are reporting. So I think perhaps any reporter who is covering any sensitive issue or trying to bring out something, an expose, has to face this. So I think this is a byproduct of the profession, or maybe occupational hazard, whatever we could say that. Yeah.
Maybe a couple of instances where you yourself have personally gone through such situations.
Well, it was long ago, probably 2008, when I just quit my job as the principal correspondent of Outlook Business, and I think a famous journalist from Canada, from Canadian Broadcasting, they were trying to do a story on the impact of nuclear breeder reactor, which was supposed to, in Kalpakkam, that area. They got the news that a lot of thyroid cancer cases due to the nuclear plant. So we were trying to do a story, and we were trying to interview some doctors and some anti-nuclear activists, and we really faced it, like, because there were people from the intelligence bureau, from the police, who didn't want that footage to come. They traced down the journalist who had come from Canada, and it was a difficult scenario, but we had to really stash away the tapes and stuff like that. But then eventually I said, it's better you leave and get the protection of the embassy. So they went to Delhi, but the story was out. But these kind of things keep happening because I think, they tap your phone or they tap where you are. And but then eventually for us, bringing out the story is probably more important. So I think this is one of the episodes that I remember. So also, a lot of times what happens is even if we go to film in a particular area, this is another example that I've seen. I think 2012, sometime we were going to film this documentary, and there were a lot of villages in a place in Tamil Nadu who were living in the area where Vaigai River was originating. The moment they saw us, they thought that, okay, we are some wildlife conservationists who are coming to evacuate them out of the region, and they didn't want to. Then when we said that no, we are not somebody from the conservation, so they actually so this is, maybe if we wouldn't have got the time to explain, they would have probably thrashed us. So there are different issues in different places, because some of them, the local communities feel they want to live where they are and they don't want to be relocated because of, whatever reasons, though the FRA and everything is in place, the Forest Right Act. But these kind of things happen. This is like a part of the stories that we do.
Okay, now this profession, I mean, with the challenges associated with it, I mean, if a young enthusiast who wants to come into this profession, two things. One is, what will be your message in terms of doing a proper reporting? The other one is, how good is this as a profession, as a career?
I think environmental journalism is the future, because I think now a lot of journalists I see are coming forth to do documentaries, not just reporting, but documentaries in various formats. They're trying to do journalism in different formats about environment. So I think as a career, it's very promising. Also, a lot of funds from international agencies or for reporting on these specific issues, a lot of journalists get. Like if you're really good, there are, and if you want to like really go to a remote region and report on a particular environmental issue, you can report, and there are funds that are given, fellowships that are given for this. There are a lot of training that's happening, and now that we know COP is happening, so there are specific journalists who are selected for COP, and they're given training and how to report and things like that. So I think that way it is really expanded, and I do see a lot of future in this particular thing. But again, how to what is the thing? One thing I would like is like get to the field, because I see a lot of armchair reporting, desktop reporting that is happening now. So people just call, and because now we have mobile phones, so we just call and we do the interview, and we don't go to the place physically and check. So I think these things are fading, and this is a little worrisome, especially like because we need to authenticate, and the journalist has to be on the field. Period. That's it. So so I think that should not change, and that's where little worry comes in, when it comes to. And also I feel that even when it comes to fact checking, I don't know a lot of people in the scientific community who come and tell us that our quote has been misreported, or what our words have been twisted to kind of fulfill the agenda of whatever the story or something like that. So these kind of things will actually be detrimental to the journalist, because tomorrow if it spreads in the circle that this particular journalist is doing this misreporting and all that, tomorrow that person will not get any story, because they will stop talking to journalists. So these kind of things I see it happening. Like, so I think it's very important to establish a good rapport with your sources, and once the story is over, you don't disappear, but you keep in touch with them. You do your follow-up stories, and you find out, okay, you reported this maybe last year or 6 months ago, but what has been the progress? So you go follow up. So you kind of have this sort of consistent relationship with your sources. I think these things are very important. It's like so, and also the most important thing for journalists, not just any environmental journalists, is to listen more than asking questions. So I think that's when the story comes, because when I turn on the recorder and when I speak to somebody, I just let them speak. I don't interrupt. So that's where the nuances of the story also come. Because if you're just getting what you want and do a story, it will just be a story. It will not be something that is more nourishing, more fulfilled, more enriching. So I think journalists should first be good listeners.
That's good. I mean, a couple of things that have evolved out of our discussion is one is you need to be responsible both to the environment and to the affected people around a region where there is an issue. Second is to be continuously following up on that news item. I mean, maybe 1 year, 2 year down the line, what is the remedial measures that have been implemented there? Good. I mean, very, very, very insightful discussion that we had. Thanks a lot. We will certainly keep in touch. I mean, in our channel also, we talk about making this world a greener place for our future generations. I think you are the people who take that thing forward. Thanks a lot. And we will be in touch.
Yeah, sure. Thank you for talking to me. Thank you.